favorite show, discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and we're going to kick this week off right. The NFL decided to add a 17th game to the regular season, which is not only historically significant, but it's actually going to create no mediocrity in the league. You're either a winning team, 9-8, or you're going to be a losing team at 8-9, and we're all going to have to readjust our football brains a bit for this one to sort of get used to that, because it's going to be weird seeing some records at the end of the year. Also, when we did talk last Friday, the Fins were busy wheeling and dealing, which now results in them picking at 6 overall. After a weekend in thought, a mixture of some pure elation and joy, then a little bit of confusion and concern, followed by being extremely happy again, because I realized the Dolphins picked up an extra first for nothing, so the worry is a little bit overblown. But we're going to talk a little draft, as well as touch on some player contract news. But without further ado, let's dive in.
Now, the Dolphins weren't content to just do one trade. They shook things up not long after the first trade was announced by doing a deal with the Eagles to go from 12 back to 6, and the Eagles get the 12th overall pick and a first-round pick in 2022 from the Dolphins, who have a lot of them. So I don't know what the Dolphins are thinking at 6, but you know what? Hey, if it's all three quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, Jaguars, Jets, 49ers, you basically have the third overall pick again if you weren't going to take a quarterback. See, this tells me the Dolphins have decided either they're not taking a quarterback at all and they're sticking with Tua, or the guy they really like, they think is still going to be there at 6 if they decide to go quarterback. I'm going to lean more towards saying that the Dolphins are sticking with Tua for now, and they're going to try to build around him and see what they can do, Miles.
I mentioned that I was elated on Friday, and I think most Dolphins fans really did feel the same way, at least from the fans I spoke to, as well as on social media, where I think a lot of people were ready to build Greer a statue. The Dolphins were able to execute a 3-team deal, some NBA shit, which allows them to gain assets and draft capital for the future while also remaining in striking distance for a potentially elite caliber player at 6. You don't see that every day, so that's very well done by Chris Grier. But then I started to think, it's all been positive in Dolphins land here, a little more critical lens. Remember, the Dolphins initially made the deal with the 49ers, which brought them back to pick 12 from pick 3. And in return, the Dolphins received 2 future firsts as well as a third-round selection next year. They essentially were recreating the Laramie Tunsil Haul, the 2 future firsts, with that final pick of the Tunsil deal, which is awesome and just really, really good business by the front office. But then they made that trade with Philadelphia, which brought them back into the top 10 at pick 6. To go back up from 12, Miami swapped 4th-round picks and coughed up a future first. And this is where my concern initially began to emerge Saturday evening. The Dolphins could have called it a day and stayed put at 12, and they would have still likely gotten their hands on a Jalen Waddle. And again, this receiving class is really deep, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if they had to invest multiple mid-round picks, second and third-round picks at the position, instead of taking someone, in the first round, especially considering they added Will Fuller. So you get to take a really good player at 12, and now you'll have 4 first-round picks again over the next 2 years because of this deal with San Francisco, and 9 guys that you're going to take in the round 1 over a 4-year span. So that is one hell of a way to kickstart a dynasty. But no, though, the Dolphins coughed up one of those ones, their own 2022 pick, a first-round pick, and they also swapped picks. But the main thing here, they gave up one of those ones to move up 6 spots and get to the Eagles' position at 6. And I know, you guys are like, Moose, your ass literally was drooling over this move 48 hours ago. We don't appreciate the flip-flopping. And listen, I just want to state, the move is still good. Like, I'm not trying to, I'm very happy. But I just think people are looking at it from one perspective, and I was guilty of this perspective. Look at the net gain. They go from 3 to 6. Miami adds that future 1 and a future third-round pick. But just looking at it like that ignores what we just spoke of, the very real possibility that they could have just sat there at 12. And no, they also gave up the shots of taking multiple players in the first round again next year. And there are a couple possibilities for why. Why would they do this? Because now that you start to think about it, you're like, is the difference between 6 to 12 for a good team worth a first-round pick that you have to give up? That's really the question here. At least that second part of the trade, that's kind of getting to me. And so upon reflection and thinking about some scenarios and maybe, looking at the draft board, I came to some potential ideas of what the Dolphins are thinking, because the more I thought about it, based on what everyone's saying, I don't think that makes sense. So the most common thing is that the Dolphins have identified a guy or a couple of players that they want to leave round one with. They're like, you know what, the rest of the round's solid, we like them, but there are these two guys that we need. And this is what I thought of initially. I figured that Miami did not want to jump too far back in fear of losing out on this potential game changer that they've identified. And of course, as you all know, my money was on that being a guy like Kyle Pitts, but Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith, all those guys are just as plausible. Miami was like, look, at 12, you probably aren't going to get one of those. But then it dawned on me, yes, these guys are good, like really good, potentially great, but they're worth an extra first-round pick? I don't think so. Again, Miami could have stayed at 12, could have stayed pat, hoping that one of these guys fell, which again isn't fun. You don't want to be in a position where you're hoping, but when this is a luxury pick and you are able to, have future capital to build off of, it's okay. But instead, they took out the waiting. They didn't want to. They want to ensure something. There's something they're trying to get. So they gave up a first-round pick to do it and move up 6 spots. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because as much as I love the guys we talked about before, I don't think I love them enough. Well, maybe Kyle Pitts. But I don't think I love them enough to give up a future one on top of the first rounder that's being used this year anyway. So not unless you're trying to get your quarterback. That's the only way, obviously, that it's worth moving up. If the guy's there that you need, that's the one position where it's worth it. So yeah, the Fins could love someone that much that they deem this necessary. They say, you know what, we think Devonta Smith with his relationship with Tua or Jamar Chase, either of those guys will elevate this offense and we will be happy with either one of them. Maybe Jalen Waddle isn't a fit. That's not true. He's definitely a fit. But I'm just using this as an example. So they're like, look, those guys will not be there. Based on our talks around the league, talking to other GMs, our scouts, talking to other scouts, they have intel. They know these things. So, or at least they know where the wind is, the direction of the wind tends to be blowing. So that's why these decisions, as much as they don't know for a fact, there's definitely some educated guessing going on. So if that's the case, if the Dolphins moved up because they need to take someone, and they felt like it was worth giving up a first. And yes, you can argue, well, it's not really a first because technically, like, if you think about it, they didn't have it before. Yes, but they did have it for about 20 minutes in there before they made the deal. And the way the deal was made, the Eagles weren't a necessary part, right? I did say it was an NBA-like trade in the sense that there were multiple teams involved, but there was no balancing of contracts or anything like that where the Eagles had to give something up. The Eagles gave us a pick. That's really what it was. Those are two independent moves that we kind of combined, but we could have easily have worked with the 49ers and sat at 12. So that's why I don't think that's like a fair argument there. So like the Dolphins clearly made this decision for a reason. They moved up again and gave up a first to do it. And if they're just going to take someone, if that's the case, then we'll reevaluate come draft night. And that kid is going to have some pressure on him. From me, and I think most of the pod, to produce right away or at least show me some promising flashes that, hey, this guy was worth giving up a first-round pick for, and we're glad that we made that effort. However, there is another possibility as to why Chris Grier, someone who is shown to value fiscal responsibility over overspending for one specific player, he moved up to 6 with the actual intention of not taking a guy, but the intention of positioning himself to move back yet again. Bear with me. What if the Dolphins want to control the flow of the draft after this initial flurry of quarterbacks? Essentially, Miami may feel that there's a chance that one of these guys falls further than expected. And my money, as you all probably know, is Justin Fields. That will be Justin Fields, who probably falls because I think Trey Lance has that upside that people really see. Similar kind of play style to Justin Fields. Yes, at a lower competition, but more kind of raw tool. He's a crazy good runner with the ball. So Trey Lance, I think, could easily kind of escalate. But if it's not Justin Fields, or if it's not Justin Fields sitting there, then it must be Trey Lance. So either way, there's a chance that the Dolphins at 6 see a guy on the board that they have no interest in, but they know that a team may want that guy, team behind them. And so they have to come talk to us. And this provides us with leverage again. This isn't a conversation that would be had at pick 12. There's no leverage. You lost it. You're out of the top 10. Quarterbacks, will be taken, and the team who wants one are going to talk to those teams in the top 10. So maybe Greer felt it was worth the first round pick to give yourself the opportunity to, worst case scenario, get one of those guys you really like, but ideally, based on the information you have, flip that sixth pick and actually end up with more than you had before, more than just the 49ers trade, because you know full well that if you just did the 49ers trade, you would have been stuck at 12 and you weren't going to make any other moves because there was no situation that a team in the 20s would want to jump up to 12, maybe, obviously, but there's not that type of player available, after that big chunk of top-end talent. 12 is kind of that spot where usually, unless there's like a big fall for a quarterback, at that point, no one's really dealing with you. And this year, because of the lack of information, especially, I think teams are going to be far more inclined to want to take the guy that they feel most comfortable with and almost be willing to move up earlier than maybe they would have in other years where they felt more comfortable with the board and felt like their guy was going to fall to them, right? This year, they might not know. They don't have that luxury. So that, again, provides the Dolphins with that leverage. And as badly as we might want one of those guys when you sit there at 6, you might hate that I'm saying this. You might be like, no. They identified someone, and they're taking someone. That's what's happening, which is totally plausible. But I would rather get another haul because we know from firsthand experience that a large amount of assets can do so much for you. It can open up so many doorways that you didn't even know were there and help turn things around quickly. A haul, you say? Yes, I say I would like a haul over a player. So firstly, Miami, at pick number 6, are ahead of 2 quarterback-needy teams in the top 10. You have the Carolina Panthers at 8 and potentially the Denver Broncos at 9. Now, if there is a market for the 6th pick because of a quarterback falling, say Carolina wants that guy bad, then Miami could very well make a deal with Carolina because other teams are involved, like either the Broncos or some of the teams we're about to get to. And so Miami's like, look, you're at 8, so it's not that much of a drop-off for us. We like the guy that, is at 14. So in order, so we're okay with going there, and they're offering us more. So what are you going to give us? So they could maybe walk away and get a couple of, mid-round picks. And so if Miami falls back to 8, they could end up getting like 2 day 2 picks. You could get like a second rounder this year, maybe a second rounder next year, if not maybe a little bit more, just to go back from 6 to 8. And like everyone's saying, Miami's going to get the same guy at 3 to 6. Realistically, they'll get the same guy at 6 to 8. And then Greer is a god, because then you've really sort of, helped build out your roster, because the mid-round picks are valuable. And at 8, you could still get the guy that you couldn't get at 12. So now the value is, you gave up a first rounder, but in return, you got a couple mid-round picks. So it's way easier to swallow. And the other possibility is that a team further down the draft board is going to be willing to outbid the Panthers or Broncos to then jump them because they themselves want their guy. And usually they're probably more willing to give up those assets because teams like that feel like they're just a quarterback away. And if they identify someone who is that quarterback, they're willing to mortgage a little bit of their future because they think that their window is now. We've seen this mistake be made a lot before, but Miami should absolutely capitalize on that mistake. So the first team that comes to mind, New England. But I don't think they're going to take a quarterback in round 1 this year, just because that's never really been a part of their track record, although they have been nothing short of surprising this offseason, so we will find out. And the other thing is, I just don't know if we would want to make a deal with them anyways, as division rivals, having some personal history there too. I'll tell you this personally, I would rather give up multiple future ones than be a reason and a helping hand to the Patriots and help them, step aside for them and help them take a potential problem if, say, like Trey Lance is following. I don't want to then see the quarterback that the Patriots win with knowing we helped facilitate that. Like I said, I'd rather give up picks than be in that situation. So obviously that's a fan perspective, but I think if the fan perspective is that way because the Patriots have been a problem, and if we help them become a problem again, because recently they have not been a problem, then we're being dumb there. There's no point to do that, and it's better to get a better deal, get a worse offer from a team that it'll hurt you less that he goes there, right? If New England's offering us, to jump up from 15, their first round pick next year, it's okay. I'll take the second and third round pick from, 2 seconds and a third round pick from the team behind them, because I am not trying to help them and Bill Belichick out at all. If Trey Lance is falling, like I said, or Justin Fields, I think other teams that Miami could really be talking to, maybe the Vikings at 14, one spot ahead of the Pats. Yes, the Vikes do have Cousins, but come on, man. They could do better and absolutely try to escape that contract. So the Vikings are a possibility, and it puts Miami right in front of the Patriots, which is just going to be nice because we probably have similar, eyes on similar players based on the scheme fits. Another team that comes to mind, of course, is the Raiders at 17. They're always in play with Gruden, but they'll likely end up sticking with Carr for this season. Washington at 19 is also a real possibility. Yes, I know they signed Fitzmagic, but come on. He's not the future. We know this. We've just gone through this. They're going to go through it too. I hope they have as much fun as we did. Well, actually, not as much, but I still hope they have some fun because Fitz is going to, I think he's great for that franchise. But that doesn't mean Washington doesn't have an eye on the future because they don't really have someone long-term right now. So at 19, move up to 6. Maybe that's a real possibility. And also the Bears at pick number 20. Probably the team that should do this. But the negative of working with these teams that I just mentioned, other than the Patriots, I'm talking about all Vikings, Raiders, maybe the Bears, Washington, is that in order to execute a trade with them, Miami's going to have to lose out on some of those big names that are available at 6, these names we've been talking about. However, the Dolphins could gain back the future one that they gave up to Philly and more. So as much as it would suck to kind of lose out, it kind of goes back to how we started the show, that no matter how good these players are at 6, are they worth multiple first-round picks? I don't necessarily think so. So, imagine close the draft night, April 29th. It's 2 in the morning, 2021, and the Fins could have left the first round with 2 high-talent players. So, they took 2 guys that you're feeling good about, maybe Najee Harris and a receiver, maybe a receiver and a lineman. And on top of those 2 guys you're excited about, they ended up getting a slew of picks because they dealt with the Bears. The Bears are desperate. Ryan Pace is terrified for his job, and he should have been fired years ago, but he knows he's really got, one last chance to offer some spark. So Andy Dalton's not offering that spark. He needs a quarterback, and what does he care about 2022's first round pick? If it doesn't work, he's fired and he knows it. So Miami, deal with him. Go back to 20. Happily go back to 20. Give us your 2022 first. Thank you very much. We'll take a couple mid-round picks as well. And now the Dolphins end up, yes, not picking further than 12, but they'll actually have more than just that deal with the 49ers. They're going to end up with multiple first-round picks. So April is getting nearer and nearer. So that's why all this draft talk's really starting to come to a head. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And listen, the draft itself, remember, is April 29th. So it is at the end of the month. But oh my God, this next month is going to be very exciting. We're going to be here every other day again and cannot wait to talk football in the month of April. Draft season is so much fun. Speaking of loving football, the NFL extended the regular season to 17 games, as we spoke about at the top of the show. And as much as I sympathize, honestly, with the players and agree that this is bullshit in terms of financial and obviously player safety, as a fan, I'm not mad that we get one more week of football, one more week of games, and one more week of hope. Come on, this is all I want. So we do know who that 17th opponent's going to be for the Dolphins, a home game in Hard Rock with the New York Giants. So if you've always kind of wanted to see the G-men play, and it's a rare thing every 8 years, now some of those matchups are not going to be as rare anymore, which is exciting. So the Dolphins did, play the Giants back in 2019 and lost with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So it's going to be cool to see how far that they've come in that time span. And it's also a big year for Joe Judge as well. So seeing 2 Belichick disciples square off, that's going to be a lot of fun. And as you guys are likely aware, the Dolphins also re-signed linebacker Elandon Roberts last week, and we talked about it. I was not a big fan of the move, considering I don't really love Roberts as a player and kind of some of the limitations he has. And if you want to know more details about that and the reasons, that we get into, then go back and check out episode 44 of the podcast. It was released on Thursday, March 25th, if you're listening via Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But we wanted to provide you guys with an update to that. So it's a contract update. The deal he signed is costing the Dolphins $1.64 million against the cap. And honestly, considering that price, I feel much, much more comfortable with the move. $1.6 million is obviously a huge sum of money. I would retire on that right now, even though, I'm young. I don't even know if that's possible. It sounds like you could retire on that. It's a lot of money. But relative to what capable veteran linebackers generally make, close to that, at least $5 million per year, if not more for the good ones, then this is easier to swallow. Remember, Benardrick McKinney makes like $9.7 million. So this is definitely easier to swallow. And as much as I think McKinney's way better than Elandon Roberts, I mean, he's not like 8 times better than Elandon Roberts. He's probably just like 4 times better than Elandon Roberts. So good deal. And he's going to be given a shot in camp to earn significant playing time. And considering his extreme familiarity with the playbook, I mean, he's known Brian Flores for pretty much his entire NFL career, save 2019. So that familiarity undoubtedly is going to help him. He'll be one step ahead from the start of camp. So, obviously, physically, he doesn't offer what McKinney does, but mentally, he'll be able to do his job, something we know, that the Dolphins very much so value, specifically on the defensive side. If you mess up and don't do your job, they're taking you off the field because there's 11 guys that all need to be in sync in order for this style of defense to work. Because when they're not in sync, we know just how bad this style of defense is. Again, 2019. So, like I said, Elandon Roberts will likely just be given that shot to earn playing time, and we could see him get more snaps at the start of the season while Benardrick eases himself in. I just don't see a world, though, in which Roberts can really hold his own with McKinney once McKinney gets going and feels comfortable in the defense. But to be completely honest, I hope Roberts proves me wrong. Why would I not want a Dolphins player to succeed? I'm just telling you what I've seen, and I just go back and listen to episode 44 if you kind of want more detail on that. But again, his limitations, specifically in pass coverage, are just sometimes too much to bear. You thought Raekwon McMillan was a problem? Watch Elandon Roberts try to cover someone out of the backfield.
I would agree with you on that. And really, it's because there could be a run of 4 quarterbacks to start off the draft. So you don't necessarily know who that 4th quarterback is going to be, whether the Falcons decide to take that player or they decide to trade back for another team that would want that player who's still there at number 4, and then you could, you pick whoever else is there. But no matter what, I think that the Dolphins are going to get a really high quality player at number 6 overall, because you think about it, even if it's only the top 3 that are quarterbacks, you're still got, Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, all of those guys. I mean, that's 5 names right there that are really high-quality players that really, I think, could be top 5 picks in any other situation. If you didn't have so many quarterback-needy teams, you could get one of those guys. And I think any one of those guys would make the Dolphins a much better team, especially if you're talking about somebody like like Pitts. Sewell, I mean, you've got a tackle that's going to be great. I mean, he's just been so good there for Oregon. Chase, a really good number 1 wide receiver. All of those guys, I think, could really help Miami. So I think they're in a great spot.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the PhinsPod. That's going to do it for us here today on this Monday. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want more of the pod, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/PhinsPod. For literally $2 a month, you can listen to bonus episodes, and the site has some other goodies as well. So link is in the description, or head to patreon.com/PhinsPod. Thank you guys so much for the support. And please remember to like the video if you enjoyed the show. Subscribe just so you never miss a chance to chat about your Miami Dolphins. We've had some recent growth on this channel, and it's been awesome on YouTube and obviously via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you all so much for listening. You're making this way more fun than it should be. So I'm going to obviously keep this rolling. Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course, YouTube as well. Continue the conversation with us over on Twitter and Instagram at PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content, phinspod.com. I hope you have an amazing day, and until next time, stay safe. Love y'all.